And welcome back to the program. We continue with the day's conversation. Being Tuesday, it is time for our segment Entrepreneurship Tuesday. And right about now, we want to better understand more about solar energy. We are seeing a lot of Kenyans, especially those in the rural parts of the country, try to move to this type of energy. But what exactly are the pros and cons of this kind of energy? What does someone need to be looking at before they move from the grid system kind of energy to this particular one? On set, I'm joined by Mark Kinguru. Hope I pronounced it correctly.
Yes, you did.
Who's the CEO of Body Systems, and he will be helping us understand more about what they do there and also more about this particular energy. Sindio. Now, before we get to the solar energy bit of it, let's just begin by understanding what Body Systems is all about and what exactly you do at the company.
Well, Body Systems is a company that was founded purely on the bedrock of technical expertise. Coming from a background of information technology and electrical engineering, myself and a colleague of mine decided to open a company back in 2015 with a focus on offering IT solutions. But later on, I discovered a niche, or a gap rather, in the market. And that is that people are struggling with access to reliable power. And that is when I decided now to come in and try offer renewable energy solutions. Yes.
So for you, it was more about trying to bridge the gap, because you noticed there was a lot of struggle in terms of getting proper electricity. So you felt like, let's try and look for another, source of energy.
Yes.
Now let's come to that bit, the solar energy, and just to better understand more about it. When you talk about solar energy, what exactly are we talking about? Maybe you can just help us understand solar energy as well as solar panels before we, dig deeper into this kind of energy.
Well, solar energy is simply energy that comes from the sun.
Just as the name suggests.
Yes. So we tap the sun's energy and convert it to electricity that can now in return be used in a domestic setup, in an industrial setup. Yes.
Okay. What about the solar panels? How do they aid in this entire process?
Solar panels, they are now the devices that convert that solar energy into consumable electric energy.
And I think it's very important to understand, because we have a good number of us Kenyans saying, I want to move from the grid system to solar energy because, of course, I want to cut down on cost. But maybe we don't even understand what exactly we need and what really goes into the process. So at least it's very important for you to explain and define for us what it means by solar energy and what it means by solar panels. Sindio, now from what you've been doing even at the company and what you've observed when it comes to matter solar energy, because you began the company in late 2019, at least now we can say it's like a year and some months therein. What are some of the things that you have noticed from Kenyans when it comes to them wanting this kind of energy?
Number one is that there's a lack of information among clients. People do not exactly know what it takes to install solar. Unfortunately, there are so many quirks in the industry. If you want someone to install solar, you will find one, even in the streets. But what they need to understand is that there is a technical field survey that needs to be done. If you want to install a solar system, the first step is conducting a technical field survey so that we are able to do an analysis of what your demand is, what are your loads. We take a load profile. How many lighting units do you have in your house? How many television sets? What is the runtime of every load in a day, so that we can design the system. So it's very difficult for someone to tell you they'll design a system or even size a system for you when they have not carried out a technical field survey. Yes.
Now, Mark, for our viewers to better understand, when you talk about sizing a system, because you're trying to look at one of the things that people can probably be looking into before they get into this kind of energy, what exactly do you mean by sizing a system?
Well, there are many components of a solar system.
Yes.
First is the solar PV modules, or the solar panels that are mounted on the roof. And then there's a battery or a storage system, the batteries that store the energy from the sun. And then there's also what we call an inverter, which is when we harvest power from the solar panels, it comes in form of DC or direct current. So for us to consume it using our appliances, we need to convert now that DC power to AC, or what the ordinary grid gives us. So there's an inverter system. So you need first to know how many loads, what is the size of the loads.
The loads is in regards to what someone has in the house. Or
yes,
what?
yes.
Okay.
You have 10 lighting units.
Oh, okay.
Each unit consumes 5 watts. So you have 50 watts. You have a fridge that consumes 100 watts. So that's 150 watts. So you tally, you do a cumulative sum of all the loads so that you're able to know how many kilowatts of inverter do I need. Then after that, what is the autonomy? The desired autonomy is the period for which you want the backup system to support you. The other point is that what is the objective of installing the system? Do you want it as a primary system? That is to say that a system where there is no existence of the grid, or do you want to use it as a hybrid system whereby sometimes you're on the grid and some other times you're on the solar system? So all those factors need to be considered before you actually go towards that kind of energy. Yes.
So when you talked about the primary system and the secondary system, I'd like you to better elaborate for us and also for our viewers to better understand. I know you just mentioned that you could have a backup, which of course lies in either of them. So when you talk about the primary system of using solar energy and the secondary system of using solar energy, better explain for us. Break it down further.
Well, there are places that have no presence of the grid.
Kabisa, there's
yes,
nothing.
Yes,
okay.
And the grid, I mean Kenya Power.
Yeah.
So in such places, if you want to install a solar system, then you know that you're mainly relying on that source of power as the source of power. You have no other source of power.
So it means solar energy is all you're relying on, is all that brings you electricity.
Exactly.
Okay.
That one is referred to as an off-grid system because the grid is not existent. So all your needs, all your power demands are going to be met by that system. So you need to design the system such as to allow you enjoy power, or you're able to store enough power to take you throughout. Yes. Yes. So that is what we call an off-grid system.
Okay.
So thereby making solar energy the primary source of power. However, in some other places, the grid is present, but only this time it is unreliable. So you want to bridge between the gap where the grid is
and you still
absent.
Want to be able to continue getting electricity.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you will install that system with an objective, not with an objective of pulling down the grid, but the grid will be present. But when it is not present, then you have a fallback plan.
Okay.
Yes.
So actually this is what it means when you're choosing to go either the primary way or the secondary way.
Exactly.
But let's come back to the solar panels. When someone is choosing to go the solar panel way, because also in the beginning, it's just that noting that a good number of Kenyans, most especially those in the rural areas, would prefer solar energy. So when you're talking about solar panels, what should someone be looking at? What should a common Kenyan be looking at if they want to go the solar energy kind of way?
Well, number one is that you have to look for skilled personnel. As I said earlier, there are so many quirks in this field, and the spread is wide. So you need to really do your research from even the top tier solar providers. You need to find out if they are licensed solar providers, because there are people who are not licensed, that they know how, at least the basics of solar, but they do not know how to install a standard system. They do not know how to size a cable, how to size the solar panels, how to size a battery bank. Number two is that there's counterfeit goods in the market.
Counterfeit, even panels?
There are.
Okay.
There are counterfeit. If you go to River Road, for example,
you'll find all
sorts of panels. Some will have stickers saying it's 300 watts, for example, but you get home and realize it was 120 watts or something. So you also need to be very careful when you're buying or sourcing your products. Some people decide to go the cheap way, but cheap is expensive. There are some people who install systems that never work at all, or some systems that worked for 30 minutes and then
that
stopped.
was it.
Yes. The other people who installed systems 5 years ago and they are still working up to date. So you need to be really careful. Look for the top tier solar providers and also look for skilled personnel.
Wow. And you've continued reiterating, or just as we began, that look for a skilled personnel, look for a trusted person. And you also alluded to the fact that lack of information is also a big problem. So probably what do you feel we need to do, at least to probably educate more and sensitize Kenyans even the more? Because when you look at countries such as South Africa, they have embraced this solar energy, and it's working for them here and there. So probably for us as Kenyans, what we need to be looking into in regards to probably sensitizing more and providing more information to Kenyans?
Well, I mentioned technical field surveys, and which is the first step that we take when we are designing a solar system. And the purpose of the technical field survey is not only to go and see what you need in terms of technical capacity, or how many panels you need. It is also to educate. So when we conduct our surveys, they are educative. They offer an educative platform. Sometimes you go and you find the client with a fixed idea that I need 2 panels, and somebody told me this is what I need. So you first tell them, you try to make them unlearn what they have learned. You try to explain, you educate them for even an hour, so that by the time you're done... That's
a long time.
It is.
Given the fact that someone had come with a fixed mind of what they know they want, and they think they really want that.
Yes, it is a long time, but it is worthwhile. Okay. Sometimes very many clients appreciate, and they say, oh, I have a whole different view of solar as opposed to what I had. Maybe we can delay this project by 2-3 months, and then when I'm ready, we'll do it. Because even the financial implication is heavy. Maybe someone was willing to spend 100,000 shillings, and you're telling them they need to spend 300,000 shillings more. So they have now to wait until they have that money to buy an appropriate system, other than spend 100K for a system that will not even help them at all.
Okay, so also that is important.
Yes, so the technical field surveys insist on them. Let not someone tell you this is the kind of system you need, but they have not even come to see exactly what you have. It is not possible. There are things like, let me introduce a term called Global Irradiance Map. There's a map that outlines the intensity of the sun in different places across the globe.
And this is also in different areas, even when we come to our very own country.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the intensity of the sun is not the same across the globe. So I might come to your place and find that maybe you have 5 peak sun hours in a day, and another place has 6. So the size of the system differs. So you may need more panels than someone who comes from a locality where the intensity of the sun is more. How do we install the solar panels? What is the angle of inclination when you're installing the panels to enable even self-cleaning? Because the solar panels over time, particles will accumulate, dust particles, and they need to be washed off by the rain. What is the orientation? How are your panels facing in regards to the compass? Is it north, south, east, west? Yes, so there are all those considerations. So
clearly there's a lot to consider before you choose to move from grid system to actually using solar energy. It's not just feeling like it's free, sun is free, so why not?
Yes.
There's a lot to consider.
Indeed.
Okay, you also talked about the different panels that this in regards to how the globe is mapped out and how different areas are mapped out. Let's talk on average. In an average household, how many solar panels would a kawaida Kenyan need?
Well, average is relative, I must say. But if we are talking of a domestic setup with maybe 4-bedroom house with about 20 lighting units and two fridges, perhaps, 2 television sets, that homestead may use about 6 to 8 solar panels, but of a specific size. Even the solar panels have sizes in terms of watts.
And also, again, this is dependent on the household.
Yes.
Okay.
So there are solar panels that are manufactured. They have a capacity of 145 watts, 200 watts, 300 watts, 345 watts. So you size the system. When you're sizing the system, you need to know what is the capacity of each solar panel. So you don't start from the panels, rather you start from the load, coming backwards. You know, so you ask the client, you take your survey and see this is the demand, this is the runtime of each load in a day. You need 4 batteries. How many panels do you need to fill these 4 batteries? Because remember, we want to harvest the maximum power within a day, within the 6 hours, that the 6 peak sun hours. You want to ensure that you optimize your harvest. So you need to make sure that you have enough panels to harvest the amount of energy and store it within those hours that are given. When we are designing solar systems, we use what we call the worst peak sun hours. You know, when
so at least it can cater for anyone and everybody.
Exactly. When we have bad weather, like in July, the number of sun hours are fewer. So when we are designing the system, we use the worst sun hours, so that even during that time, it will harvest. People have the notion that solar works only when the sun is so bright. We get the energy, it's light energy that it converts. The amount of production may differ, it will go low. But if you have sized your system very well, then even during those days, it is supposed to cater for you.
I want to come to the financial implications, but before I get to that, you just mentioned that the way in which you design the solar system is at least to cater for even the worst of weathers, when it's probably very cold or very rainy. And there's that notion, the way you mentioned, that people think that it only works when there's sun. So then does it mean that during the night it can still work?
No, it cannot work at night because we don't have sunlight then. What that means is that as long as we have sunlight, it doesn't have to be intense. By the way, production of solar panels is inversely proportional to temperature. So when the sun is very hot, it affects production of the solar panel negatively. And
that is important to clarify, because you see, there we're trying to mention that we only think that it has to work when there's sun, and there has to be a lot of it. But you're countering that with a different opinion.
Yes.
Okay.
When you're placing your solar panels, you're supposed to orient them in a way such that they face the harvest during the better part of the morning. You know, put them facing east, so that you start harvesting when the day is not hot yet, so that by midday you have harvested almost half of what you need. Because in the afternoon, when it gets hot, then the production starts going down. Yes. So there are different, there are 2 kinds of solar systems. There's solar PV and solar water heating. Solar water heating is opposite, because we need heat now. But solar PV is different. We need to harvest during the morning hours, when it's not very hot.
When it's not very hot. So at least for even those that are already using solar energy, now we know, or they know, that the morning hours is the best time to harvest that kind of energy.
Exactly.
Now let's come to the cost bit of it, because also there was a moment where you mentioned that sometimes if one wants to install it, it might even cost you probably 300 or 100, depending on the area, depending on what it is, the panel you're getting. And a good number of why Kenyans would want to move towards that kind of energy is because they want to reduce on cost. But it looks like it's not quite it. So how would you rate this kind of energy in terms of cost?
Well, I must say that the initial cost of installing solar is high and in some cases prohibitive. Because if you go to the village and tell someone to produce 300,000 shillings...
They're like, okay, what are you saying?
What are you
I'd rather
about?
remain on the grid system.
Exactly.
Okay.
But the benefits of solar far outweigh the initial cost of installation, because one, solar is a renewable source of energy. You have it today, you will have it tomorrow, as long as the sun is shining. Number two is that there's diverse applications of solar. You can use it for water heating, water pumping, powering your house, and then the maintenance cost of solar is extremely low. Because all you need is to clean your panels from time to time if you're in a dusty environment. So yes, that is it. So it may be prohibitive for some people, but once you install solar, then you're home and dry for the next many years.
The long while. So what you're saying in terms of cost is that it's only on the onset per se. That is when it would look to be very expensive.
Yes.
But all through it's at least cost effective, because when it comes to maintenance, using it, and then you're also assured of power all through.
Yes.
Now let's come to the business bit, at least move away from the household. When someone is probably in a small kind of business setup and they want to install this kind of energy, what do they need to be looking into? Just trying to get the difference between those wanting to install in a house or in a household kind of setup, and probably those beginning a business.
Well, so we are getting away from the solar, what we call the solar home systems, into grid tie systems.
Oh, so there are actually even varieties?
Yes,
okay.
There are. Grid tie systems are what we use in now larger industrial setups. There's something called payback period. And for grid tie systems, the payback period is a bit shorter than domestic systems. For example, you go to a hotel that is consuming 1 million shillings in electric power bills, and you introduce a system that will save 60 to 70% of their consumption. So that means instead of paying 1 million shillings, they will be paying 60,000, 600,000.
Which is a huge cost cut down.
Yes. So if you tell that person to give you maybe 7 million shillings or 8 million to develop, to build that system for them, that what means is that in less than 2 years, then the system has paid back. Because if you do the math, then in less than 2 years, they have already saved that amount in power bills.
In power bills. Now, just as the way you're introducing us to that there's actually different varieties of the solar system. There's that is centered for household, for even small businesses. And sometimes there's this notion that probably big companies and big industries cannot really have this kind of energy. What would you say about that?
Well, that is not true, because I think solar energy is limitless, I can say, because you only need to know what is the demand you need. Maybe you may not pull the grid down effectively. You need the grid because
also a good number of industries and companies still have the grid system.
Exactly, and the grid tie systems, by the way, do not have a storage, a battery bank. They are so huge, and the most expensive component of a solar system is a battery bank. So it is not possible to implement that, the battery bank, in such a huge application. So the grid tie systems are such as to run only during the day when the sun is present. So at night we revert back to the grid. In developed countries, if you have a grid tie system and your demand is 10 kilowatts, for example, and you're generating 15 kilowatts, you're allowed to kick back the extra 5 kilowatts to the grid. And so what you find is that you will also be billing the power company. Yes. But we are not there yet.
We are not there yet.
Yes.
But it's all in all, at least we know and we better understand that it's not limitless.
Yes.
And it can cater and cover across.
Exactly.
Now, again, also, since you're trying also to break down for our viewers to understand more about this kind of energy and also to demystify some notions, there's also this particular notion that solar panels may last forever. Is that true? Do they have a lifespan? And if they do, how long?
They do have a lifespan. Especially, the best thing is, first of all, ensure that you buy products from at least top-tier, two-tier providers. The average lifespan of a solar panel is 25 years.
So that is also quite a long time.
Yes. The average lifespan of an inverter is 7 to 10 years. The lifespan of a battery is about 5 years, depending on the quality again, and also the charging cycles, how well. Because when you're designing a system and you don't size it to allow your panels to charge your batteries fully, then you're reducing the lifespan of the batteries. So you need to, even the design, even the workmanship of that, of whoever is installing your system or even designing, is very vital in determining even the lifespan of
the panel.
Of not only the panels, but especially the batteries.
The batteries.
Yes.
Now, aside from just the charging bit that you've talked about, what else, aids in that lifespan? Either to be, the way you mentioned, 25 years. What makes it to just be 25 years, aside from that, just the charging bit?
Well, when you're doing your installation.
Also, that is a factor.
Yes.
Okay.
You have to make sure that you use the standards that are put in place. Size your cables well.
Those are the standards?
Yes. Size your cables well so that they do not overheat, because solar, by the way, has very high amounts of current. If you don't use standard cables, then the system is going to overheat and perhaps even cause a fire. So size the cables well. Size the solar panels well. Tell the person if they need 8 panels, give them 8 panels.
Don't be very honest.
Yes,
with them.
do not take shortcuts so that you secure the business.
Yeah.
Go for good products. Advise the client accordingly. Sometimes you had better not do the job other than do a bad job at all. Most of our clients come from referrals. We do very good jobs. The workmanship is good. And once the client is happy, then you can be sure you will get repeat business.
So even at your company, most of the works comes from referrals.
Exactly.
What you've been able to do best and being honest to the client.
That is our niche, actually.
That is your niche,
yes.
Honesty.
Honesty, proper workmanship, standards.
Standards,
yes.
Very important. Now we are almost, in fact, we even bring the conversation to a close, but I wouldn't want us to close without just very briefly talking about the disadvantages of this energy, because you can sit here and talk about how important it is, talk about how countries are moving towards it, talk about how countries in Africa, especially South Africa, embracing this kind of energy. But what is the downside? What is the disadvantage of this kind of energy from your perspective?
Well, it is dependent on weather patterns. So sometimes when the weather is bad, you don't have sufficient power. You cannot have no power at all, but you don't have sufficient power. Number 2 is that the cost of installation is high. And number 3, I would say the evolution in technology is very fast. Today you buy a polycrystalline PV module, and tomorrow you're told we are now using monocrystalline. You're told we were using one phase, now we're using bifacial panels. Well, it's a plus, but if you want to move with the technology, then you have maybe to keep on
keep up with the technology itself.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Mark, for your insights. They're at least trying to make us understand more about this kind of energy. If at all one wants to move towards that direction, at least now they have insights, big pits here to try and better understand what they need to be looking into.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So that was Mark Kinguru, who's the CEO of Body System, just like I mentioned, talking to us and making us better understand about solar energy. And you're not yet done with the show. Just a couple of minutes before we get done. One boy on the other side.
On my end of things.
On your end of things. Is this something you might want to consider, solar energy? Because the way I was mentioning, even earlier when we began the show, is that a good number of Kenyans are trying to move from the grid system, or what the kind of electricity that we are used to solar energy, and most reasons is because of cost. It is cheaper, the sun is always available. As long as I've installed, I'm good to go. But Mark has at least brought a bit of a downside from this kind of energy, saying that sometimes weather might be a hindrance here and there. So from you, just as an individual, is this something you might want to consider?
Absolutely. We're moving towards a hybrid way of living.
Yeah.
Just looking at what we have and what other alternatives we can take on. As it stands, kawaida stima is what runs the show, and we know the monopoly of state of things that we shall not get into.
And I know
that we shall not get into, but at least
and sometimes
solar energy
just decides, you know what? But then hiyo siku
acha nienue stima.
Na ndio ndio umejipanga manzi, alafu imedecide to otherwise.
Kaleka friend,
and you've got no option.
Yeah, but with the alternative of solar energy, and especially for taking showers, I'm seeing even so many households, so many apartments that are being put up these days, they're having the alternative of having solar to power the bathrooms. Like shower, inakuwa powered by the solar, which is good. Helps save a coin or two, and you still get what you want at the end of the day. So moving towards alternative ways of getting these resources is definitely a plus that I am open to. Hybrid way of living.
Yeah, and heading towards that direction, just the way Mark was even mentioning, embrace technology. If that is where we are right now, if that is the space in which we are in, so why not?
Why not?